You might not think twice about what's on your feet when things start heating up. Here's a fascinating twist: wearing socks in bed could actually make you perform better. Sounds strange, right? But science has something surprising to say about it, because as it turns out, that tiny layer of fabric might hold the secret to deeper pleasure, stronger connection, and even better orgasms. Let's unpack why this seemingly small detail can have such a big impact on how we experience intimacy. Most people don't realize how small details can completely change the way our body and mind experience sex. We tend to focus on the big stuff: technique, attraction, timing, but sometimes the key to unlocking better performance lies in something so simple, so ordinary, that it almost sounds ridiculous.
Like wearing socks. Yeah, socks.
Now, before you laugh, let me explain why this tiny piece of clothing might hold the key to a more pleasurable and connected sexual experience. Let's start with what happens in the body when we're getting intimate. Sexual arousal isn't just about what's going on below the belt. It's a full body physiological event. Your brain, your heart, your hormones, your nervous system, all working together in this beautiful, chaotic dance. But here's the catch: your body is picky. It needs to feel safe, warm, and relaxed before it can fully let go and allow desire to take over. And that's where temperature plays a surprisingly big role. When your body feels cold, it instinctively prioritizes survival over pleasure. Blood flow shifts away from your extremities, like your hands and feet, and focuses on keeping your core warm. That means less circulation where you actually need it for arousal. So when your feet are cold, your brain reads that as a potential threat. It thinks we might be in an unsafe environment. And when your brain is in survival mode, it's not exactly in the mood to think about passion. It's thinking about staying alive. Now, imagine slipping on a pair of warm socks before you crawl into bed. Almost instantly, your body starts to relax, your feet warm up, blood vessels expand, and your brain receives a signal that it's safe. No threats, no discomfort, just warmth and security. That's when your parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system, takes over. This system is crucial for sexual arousal because it promotes relaxation, enhances blood flow, and allows the body to become more sensitive to touch and pleasure. It's fascinating. Research from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands actually confirmed this. In one study, participants were more likely to reach orgasm when they wore socks during sex. The difference was astonishing. Only about 50% of participants reached orgasm with bare feet, but when they wore socks, that number jumped to around 80%. The reason wasn't magic, it was biology. Warming the feet created a sense of physical and psychological safety, which made it easier for their bodies to fully surrender to pleasure. Think about how often we underestimate these subtle signals. You might have had a night where everything felt right: the lighting, the touch, the chemistry, but your body just didn't cooperate. Maybe your mind was too active, or you couldn't fully relax. In many cases, that's not about lack of attraction or interest. It's your body's way of saying, I don't feel completely safe right now. And safety, in the language of your nervous system, doesn't just mean protection from danger. It means comfort, warmth, and predictability. We're wired to associate warmth with connection. From the moment we're born, warmth means love. Think about it: when you were a baby, being held against a warm body was how you knew you were safe. That association never really leaves us. So when we bring warmth into the bedroom, literally, it taps into a deep, ancient sense of security that allows our body to open up to pleasure instead of resisting it. And here's another layer most people miss: arousal isn't a linear process. It's not like flipping a switch. It's more like tuning an instrument. For some people, it takes longer for their body to reach that harmony between mind and desire. Cold feet or slight discomfort can interrupt that tuning process without us even realizing it. The moment the body feels something off, too cold, too tense, too distracted, it subtly pulls back. Wearing socks, in a sense, removes one of those interruptions. It lets the mind and body stay in sync. There's also something about psychological cues. When you're warm, you're more likely to feel cozy, cared for, even emotionally closer to your partner. That emotional connection feeds directly into sexual chemistry. A lot of people think sex is purely physical, but so much of performance depends on the emotional state of your mind. If you feel connected, safe, and understood, your body follows suit. The brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which amplifies trust and relaxation, making arousal and orgasm not only more likely, but also more fulfilling. Now, let's look at this from a purely physiological standpoint for a moment. Blood flow is everything when it comes to sexual performance. In men, it determines erection quality. In women, it influences vaginal lubrication and sensitivity. Cold constricts blood vessels. Warmth expands them. That's basic physiology. So by keeping your feet warm, you're not just creating comfort, you're literally supporting better circulation throughout your body, including to the areas that matter most during intimacy. It's a perfect example of how interconnected everything in our body is. People often separate mind and body as if they're two different systems, but in reality, they're in constant conversation. When your feet are warm, your brain interprets that as a sign of comfort. When your brain feels comfortable, your hormones shift, dopamine and oxytocin increase, stress hormones like cortisol decrease, and arousal hormones like testosterone and estrogen can do their job. It's a cascade effect, all from something as simple as a pair of socks. What's even more fascinating is how this small act can transform your mindset. There's something intimate about comfort itself. When you're comfortable, your focus shifts from, am I doing this right? Or does my body look okay? To, how does this feel? That shift from self consciousness to self awareness is where better performance really begins. You stop performing and start experiencing. That's when connection becomes effortless. And here's where it gets even more interesting. This isn't just about physical warmth. The symbolism of socks, warmth, and comfort ties into deeper psychological associations. When you wear socks, especially soft ones, you're sending yourself a subconscious message. I'm allowing myself to be comfortable. That's powerful, especially in a culture that often pressures us to perform, impress, or achieve even in intimate moments. By choosing warmth and comfort, you're giving yourself permission to enjoy instead of achieve. In one of my favorite studies on arousal and safety, researchers found that when people were asked to rate their level of sexual desire in different emotional states, those who felt calm, cared for, and secure consistently reported higher levels of arousal than those who felt anxious or cold. The body literally cannot distinguish between physical and emotional safety. They're processed in overlapping areas of the brain. So when your body feels physically warm, it can trick your mind into emotional ease. It's all part of the same wiring. Let's put this into a real life perspective. Imagine a couple on a cold winter night. They're cuddled up under the blankets, maybe watching a movie. They're both wearing socks, their feet warm and relaxed. There's no rush, no performance anxiety, just connection. The warmth they feel physically mirrors the emotional warmth between them. Their bodies respond naturally without pressure. Compare that to a situation where the environment feels cold, sterile, or slightly uncomfortable. Your body never quite settles in, and that unease quietly echoes in the mind, disrupting desire. Our bodies are incredibly sensitive instruments. They respond to even the subtlest cues. That's why when we talk about performance, we shouldn't just talk about stamina or technique. True performance in bed is about creating the right internal conditions for pleasure. Socks might not sound sexy, but they can help create that perfect environment where your mind and body work together rather than against each other. And maybe on a deeper level, this idea challenges how we think about sex altogether. We often chase excitement, novelty, or intensity, believing those are the keys to satisfaction. But sometimes the real magic comes from comfort, from feeling completely safe and unguarded. When you feel safe, your body gives you permission to explore, to take risks, to surrender. That's when desire flows naturally. It's almost poetic, really. The same warmth that signals survival also fuels intimacy. The same blood flow that keeps you alive also makes you feel alive. And all of it, from the tips of your toes to the chemistry in your brain, works together in ways we're only beginning to understand. So the next time you're preparing for a night of connection, don't underestimate the power of warmth. Slip on a pair of socks, not because it's trendy or because science says so, but because your body deserves comfort, your partner deserves presence, and your mind deserves to experience intimacy without distraction. Who knew that something as simple as warming your feet could open the door to deeper pleasure? It's a small act, but one that sends a profound message to your brain. You're safe. You can let go now. And when you do, performance stops being something you strive for. It becomes something that naturally unfolds. Maybe that's the secret we've been overlooking all along. That great sex doesn't start with grand gestures or perfect timing. It starts with warmth, with safety, with something as humble and as powerful as a pair of socks. It's funny, isn't it? We often think of sex as something purely physical: touch, chemistry, rhythm, timing, but in reality, it's every bit as emotional as it is physical. The body doesn't just respond to stimulation, it responds to how safe, comfortable, and connected we feel. And believe it or not, something as simple as wearing socks during sex can completely shift that emotional landscape. It's not just about keeping your feet warm. It's about creating the kind of comfort that lets your mind and body fully sink in the moment. Because when you're relaxed, when your body feels safe, that's when true intimacy unfolds. You see, one of the biggest challenges people face in the bedroom isn't a lack of desire. It's distraction. The mind wanders. You start thinking about how you look, how you're doing, whether your partner's enjoying themselves, or even about that email you forgot to send. It's like there's a tiny committee in your head narrating every move, and that chatter pulls you out of the experience. But comfort has a quiet way of silencing that noise. When you feel at ease, physically and emotionally, your focus shifts naturally back to pleasure. Wearing socks might sound trivial, but it's a symbol of that comfort. It's your body saying, I can stay here, I can relax, I'm safe. From a psychological perspective, intimacy thrives when we feel secure. This isn't just a theory, it's deeply rooted in attachment science. Humans are wired for connection. When we feel emotionally safe, our brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone often called the love chemical. It's the same hormone that floods our system when we hug someone we trust or when a parent holds a baby. Oxytocin helps quiet the stress centers of the brain and opens us up to connection. In the context of sex, that means you can stop performing and start feeling. Socks, in a weird way, contribute to that by keeping your body in a calm, regulated state. They reduce physical discomfort, which helps reduce psychological tension too. I once had a couple tell me about how something as small as temperature completely changed their intimacy. They used to argue over the thermostat. She was always cold, he was always hot. That tension carried into the bedroom. She couldn't relax because she was shivering. He couldn't focus because he was sweating. It seems small, but those little physiological discomforts translate into emotional ones. When they found a balance, warm socks for her, lighter sheets for him, it was like flipping a switch. Suddenly, they weren't fighting their environment, they were in sync with it. And that's when the real connection began. You can think of comfort as the foundation upon which arousal is built. When your body is uncomfortable, too cold, too tense, too self conscious, it sends a subtle but powerful message to your brain. Something's not right. Your mind interprets that discomfort as potential danger. And when the brain senses danger, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for fight or flight. Blood flow shifts away from areas of pleasure and toward muscles that help you survive. It's almost impossible to feel aroused or connected in that state. But when you're warm, safe, and emotionally grounded, the opposite happens. The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, takes over. Your heart rate stabilizes, blood flow improves, touch feels more intense, and you become far more present. There's something beautifully human about that because sex at its core is about presence. It's not about performance metrics or chasing a perfect orgasm. It's about the experience of being fully there with yourself and your partner. When you're both comfortable emotionally and physically, you start sensing on a deeper level. Your breathing aligns, your touch becomes more attuned, and that sense of starts to take over. It's what psychologists sometimes call emotional co regulation, the process where two people's nervous systems actually start mirroring each other's calm. And warmth, literal warmth, helps that happen. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating. Studies in thermoregulation, the body's ability to manage temperature, show that when we reach optimal warmth, not only do we physically relax, but our brain starts producing more serotonin and oxytocin. These chemicals enhance mood, trust, and connection. So the warmth you feel isn't just physical, it's emotional chemistry in action. When your partner's skin touches yours and both of you are in that relaxed, cozy state, the brain interprets that as love, safety, and belonging. It's almost poetic the way our biology rewards connection when we create comfort. This is also why emotional comfort during intimacy is so important. A lot of people try to separate emotional intimacy from physical sex, but the truth is they're deeply intertwined. You can't fully enjoy one without the other. When you feel emotionally distant, your body senses it, your arousal might start, but it doesn't flow, your muscles stay slightly tense. You're breathing shallow, your thoughts scattered. On the other hand, when you feel emotionally close, when there's laughter, affection, warmth, that connection translates directly into physical responsiveness. It's like the body is saying, I trust this, I can let go. And that's what socks symbolize in this story. Not just warmth, but permission. Permission to let go of control, to stop overthinking, to lean into pleasure without self judgment. That's something we don't talk about enough, the role of comfort and desire. Desire isn't born out of performance, it's born out of relaxation. It blooms when you stop trying to impress and start allowing yourself to feel. So when your feet are warm, your body is relaxed, and your mind is calm, you create the ideal internal conditions for intimacy to thrive. I've had people laugh when I tell them about the sock study. They think it sounds ridiculous that something so small could make such a difference. But that's the beauty of human sexuality. It's complex and simple all at once. It's driven by millions of years of evolution, yet it's also shaped by tiny details like temperature or texture or touch. These small cues tell the brain whether it's okay to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is the heart of good sex. It's not about showing off your best moves, it's about showing up as your truest self. There's a quiet intimacy that comes from being completely comfortable with someone, the kind where you can laugh halfway through, shift positions, or whisper something honest without fear. That's emotional comfort, and the body feels it. In those moments, the brain produces higher levels of oxytocin, reinforcing trust, connection, and yes, even pleasure. That's why sex with someone you feel emotionally close to often feels better. It literally is better biochemically speaking. Temperature, safety, and connection all weave together into one experience. When your body temperature is regulated, when you're not shivering or overheating, you stop thinking about yourself as an individual in the moment and start melting into the shared experience. The edges between you and your partner blur, your senses heighten, time slows. This isn't just romantic language, it's neuroscience. When the brain's default mode network quiets down, a network responsible for self referential thoughts, you stop overanalyzing and start experiencing pure connection. And it's not just about romantic relationships. This principle applies to how we experience pleasure in general. Comfort and safety are the gateway to all forms of sensory joy. Think about how food tastes better when you're relaxed, how music feels deeper when you're in a good mood, how hugs linger longer when you trust the person. Our senses are amplified when our mind isn't on defense. Sex is no different. The more emotionally and physically comfortable we are, the more our body rewards us with pleasure. What's remarkable is how universal this is. Across cultures, across time, warmth has always been associated with intimacy. We gather around fires, we share blankets, we seek physical closeness, not just for survival, but because it feels deeply human. The act of keeping each other warm has always been an act of care, and care is the foundation of connection. So when you think about wearing socks during sex, you're not just thinking about warmth, you're tapping into something ancient, an instinct to create safety before pleasure. Our culture often glorifies the idea of passion as wild, uncontrollable, or even chaotic, but real passion, the kind that lasts, the kind that feels profound, grows in environments of safety. When you don't have to guard yourself, when you can breathe, laugh, and feel, that's when desire deepens. And yes, warmth plays a role in that too. Your body doesn't want to surrender when it's cold or uncomfortable. But when it's warm, it says, I'm home. So maybe the secret isn't about performance hacks or complicated positions or chasing intensity. Maybe it's about simplicity, about creating a space where both bodies feel safe enough to explore. Maybe it starts with something as mundane as socks, but leads to something far from ordinary, a deeper, calmer, more connected kind of intimacy. It's beautiful, really, how biology and psychology work hand in hand. The physical warmth from your socks leads to emotional warmth between partners. The emotional warmth strengthens physical pleasure. It's a feedback loop of connection. And when that loop is complete, when comfort, safety, and desire intertwine, that's when intimacy becomes effortless. So the next time you think of socks in bed, don't laugh it off. Think of it as a tiny act of self care, a small investment in presence. It's your way of saying to your body and your partner, I'm comfortable here. I'm not rushing. I'm ready to connect. Because when your body feels safe, your heart opens. And when your heart opens, everything, every touch, every kiss, every breath feels just a little more alive. In the end, maybe the real message isn't just about socks at all. It's about creating conditions where love, connection, and pleasure can naturally thrive. It's about slowing down enough to feel everything, to let the warmth spread not just through your skin, but through the space between you. Because great sex isn't just about intensity, it's about intimacy. And intimacy at its core begins with comfort.